Welcome to this episode of the People Dividend. I am absolutely delighted today to have in the virtual studio Roderick Lenhart. Um, Let me tell you a little bit about Roderick before we dig into so many interesting topics around travel and authorship and how people affect and shape all of that, and how an individual spirit moves forward in those domains of travel and authorship and business. Roderick came from the U.S. He's a Michigan-born lifelong entrepreneur, multi-number one best-selling author, and sought-after speaker who has started his business journey at a very young age. So let's find out, because I know that over the last 30 years or so, he has expanded his ventures to create multiple multi-million dollar companies in both the product and service industries. We're also curious to explore AI in that regard. And he's traveled to more than 50 countries across 6 continents. Roderick brings a unique worldview and a deep appreciation for freedom and autonomy in his work. That's a great topic. Donating all profits to a foundation, his foundation, Student Leader Abroad partnership with EF Tours, with the goal of sending 1 million kids on life-changing trips. And we'll get into all the good stuff about where to contact Roderick and how to get in touch with him, and it'll all be in the show notes. So let me just say, Roderick, take it away. Tell us about yourself. I can't do justice to this pathway. It's wonderful.
I appreciate the introduction. You pretty much nailed it. Lifelong entrepreneur, and I sold my business in 2022, semi-retired at 42-ish years old. And like most entrepreneurs, that lasted all of 2.5 months before I was figuring out some evil scheme to get into next. And that's when I wrote the book, $1 Million Flip Flops, and didn't know if 3 people would read it, and ended up hitting number 1 in 7 categories on launch week, which was awesome. And then we started our foundation concurrently, Send a Student Leader Abroad. So ended up going to Brown, getting my ICF as a professional coach. So that's what I kind of do for fun. I do everything because I want to now, not because I have to. And it puts a little different spin on things. But like you said in the intro, we donate 100% of everything to the foundation, and lots to talk about there. We would run out of time if I went too hard into the foundation, but we're sending our first kids, and they go through a 12-month entrepreneurial program. And it's all in the last month has really started. This idea from 2.5 years ago has started to come to fruition. So a lot of exciting stuff happening.
Well, that's great. And I know that many in our audience are interested in how experiences shape perspectives and shape outlooks. And, tell us about your travel around the globe and how that's affected your outlook on life and business.
Yeah, the best way to sum it up is probably the ethos of the foundation, which is there's no them, there's only us. And, what we do in the foundation is we send kids, think middle school kids that go to Europe is the easiest way to explain it if you're not familiar with EF Tours. But it's an educational based program. They go with teachers, and, we aim to serve kids that otherwise couldn't afford a trip like that. And the idea is that their leaders, they start their own businesses. Like, you would just be blown away if you saw what these kids are, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, what they're accomplishing to be able to go on this trip. And we help them with coaching. I bring in speakers from around the world, et cetera. But ultimately, it's within them to be able to accomplish this. And if they don't make all the money with their business, that's where we step in. We pay the rest of the bill for them so that they can go on this trip, as long as they've met all the mile markers along the way of the program. And like I said, we're sending our first kids. They actually start their program here in like 12 days. So that's all exciting. But, the idea, Mike, is just that travel teaches you something that a book or a documentary or a movie never will. And it's empathy, and it's resilience, and it's that lesson that when you hear the news, they talk about those people and what they are doing. When you travel, certainly extensively, like I have, you realize there is no them. All 7, 8, 9 billion of us are exactly the same. We want the same things out of life. And it makes people far less easy to be called enemies when you understand that they're just like you. And that's the experience that we want to offer to kids that are kind of in that growing learning, they're starting to model how they'll turn out as adults and have that experience, but also take that experience back to a community that may otherwise not be having that conversation. And our aim is the ripple effect of what that does. They're know them, only us.
Yeah, I mean, having been a Peace Corps volunteer for 3 years in the Solomon Islands in the way back era for me, and having done enough of life across different places, how do you think these experiences shape entrepreneurialism?
I think it's the same thing. I think when you can come to any, I say this when I'm teaching people about sales. I've been in sales my whole life. And when you come from a place of service and you're not trying to sell anything, you're just finding out if what your solution is the best fit for that person, then it's no longer sales, right? It's just, you're just coming to serve. And I think when you have the experiences that put you in a place where you have to think on your feet, where maybe you don't understand the language, you don't understand the street signs, you have to ask for help, you have to reach out to people you might otherwise not. Those are the travel things that make great salespeople. And ultimately, every entrepreneur is a salesperson. Ultimately, all of us are salespeople, whether you're selling your partner on what movie to watch, or you're selling $1 million deal to somebody. We're all selling something all the time to each other. So they're universal and skills that help in every area of life.
That's great. And, as I think about that and considering that, I'm sure some in our audience will wonder, that energy and that fueled in some ways a book which became a bestseller. Talk about the book, talk about that process.
Yeah, so it's called $1 Million Flip Flops: Peace, Prosperity, and the Courage to Change Course in Life and Business. And it's kind of 1/3 manifesto, 1/3 manuscript, and 1/3 manual is the best way to look at it. But it's my experience. I started with nothing. I mean, we grew up relatively poor, and I learned from a young age, if I wanted something, a Nintendo, a bike, new shoes for school, I was going to have to figure out how to earn a couple dollars myself. And so my entrepreneurial journey really did start at 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. And I've only spent 2.5 years of my 45 working years in a job. And that in itself is hard to do. A lot of most businesses fail. Most people that leave corporate and start a business go back to corporate. All the stats, but the book goes through my journey of those couple years where I did have a job, and I was 24 years old. I had already had 2 successful businesses before that, and I chased money. And I was making more in a month than my parents ever made in a year. I could buy anything I want, do anything I want. I was 24 years old, and I was absolutely miserable. And I woke up every day and said, is this all there is? I was very much having a midlife crisis in my mid-20s. And to the point where every day I was anxious, I was depressed, at times I was suicidal, and I didn't know why.
Sorry about that.
And well, thank you. And like most things, you look back on that, and it's now some of the best lessons and best experiences of my life. I ended up digging myself out of that hole, quitting the job, starting another new business, and vowing to myself that I would never find myself in that place again. And really not just putting it behind me, but exploring, how did I end up here? How did the decisions that I thought I was making that were quote unquote right? I call it right map, wrong mountain. We're given this map by society of what's going to lead to happiness and fulfillment and success. And it's someone else's map. So you can do all the right things to get to the top of that mountain, but it wasn't your mountain. And you get to the top and say, well, what happened? So those are the tools that I develop in the book. I'm a voracious reader. You can see a few of the couple thousand books I have here. And what I did at that age was really dive into all the greatest books I had ever read and put together a formula that would allow me to make decisions knowing that they're right for me, and not for my mom, not for my pastor, my parents, my partner, right for me. And that was just something I used as a tool to make sure that I didn't end up in that place again, Mike. But it became the waves method as part of the book, which is, your why, authenticity, values, exploration, and your statement of purpose. So that's what the book's about. And like I said, I didn't know when I wrote it. It's like, if I can help one person, it's silly to let all this just die inside my brain. So I went through took me about 4 months of writing to write the book, and much longer than that of editing and going through that whole process. Anybody who's written a book knows what I'm talking about. But yeah, we were fortunate when we launched. We sold several thousand copies the first few hours, and on Amazon doesn't take much to hit number one doing that kind of volume. So I even replaced some of my heroes that I follow, like Taylor Welch and some of those guys, bumping them down a couple slots for a few days. So it's been a fun journey all on its own.
Yeah, I'm always amazed, as an author who has to sell books on Amazon, of rankings of, my book, Integrity by Design, Working and Living Authentically, and seeing how well it ranks in business ethics. And it's always light. And, many of the things that we're talking about are in my newest book, which, most of my audience will know about, the People Dividend, Leadership Strategies for Unlocking Employee Potential. I think it, helps with these ideas about entrepreneurialism and people who feel that they're stuck in the matrix, and that they're a cog in the wheel, that they don't really make a difference. And how do you get a declining managerial population to focus on people, so that you don't lose all of that talent and that potential. So that's what I want to think about. I want to hear a story, in your work as an executive coach, of how you bring all of what you've been describing to effect in a coaching situation.
So primarily I work with custom home builders. They're about half of my clients because my experience was in real estate and construction for 25 years. But during that time, I've visited now 65 countries. So you don't have to save and save and save and build and build and build to hopefully someday buy your health back, buy your friends back, buy your family back that have since passed. And you can live an epic life at the same time. So the tagline you'll see everywhere for my stuff is reclaim your time, sanity, and profits. And most entrepreneurs are not business owners. They're job owners, because if they leave, the machine breaks, and that's not a business. That's a job. And if I can start to reclaim your time, which is what we focus on primarily, all other metrics go up. Your health goes up, your profits go up, your happiness goes up, your relationships get better. Everything gets better if I can reclaim your time. If you want to scale, we can do that with that time. If you want to spend more time with your family, we can do that. And there's systems and processes that are proven, not just by myself, but by hundreds of thousands of other entrepreneurs, of what it takes to do that. And, it's been my experience that you can have both. It's not some mystical thing. You don't have to make $100 million to make that a possibility. So that's what I hope to impart on my folks. And, I've had 12 different businesses. I've done in excess of $100 million in sales in my life, plus all the travel. And, it's that worldview that I bring to my coaching sessions.
Oh, that's great. And I think this being able to bring more of who you are to what you do, aligning who you are with, what you do, is really a key to happiness and fulfillment. In, my earlier book, Integrity by Design, is a lot about, what holds things together, and it's about congruency, and it's about alignment. And, it's great if your words and actions match, and even better, your thoughts, words, and actions match. Because when you have that, if you're a leader, if you're a manager in organizations, people tend to be happier around you, and people like working for happy people. It is a sense of alignment that drives this ability to get people to unleash and unlock their potential at work. And I think that's what I did with the new book, The People Dividend, and the name of this podcast is extend those ideas, so that it's not only about understanding who you are in order to affect happiness and change. The second book is really about agency and what you do with that and how you develop people, which is, unfortunate because, the erosion of middle management and big organizations. You still have a manager, but that manager is expected to work and not to develop people. And I think that's probably a good thing in the long run. But as a lifelong, why is it for you that aligning who you are and what you want to do, is key to happiness and fulfillment? I think I understand the story for me and so many I work with.
Yeah. I think it's true for all of us. I don't think it has to do with corporate or entrepreneur or anyone. It's, one of the very first things probably you and me work on with people is, what do you want February 5th of next year to look like? Mm-hmm. What time do you want to wake up? Who do you want to work with during the day? What does your day look like? And that can be somebody with a job or somebody as an entrepreneur. But until you can identify that, how do you know next year is going to be any different than this year? And we spend more time looking up car reviews or booking travel than we do thinking about what do we want our life to look like a year from now. And it's that cliche term, live the same year 70 times in a row and call it a life. And it's because we aren't taught to think that way. Society specifically doesn't want us to think that way. This is a whole other podcast we could get into, but the titans of education, we're not setting out to make us all free thinkers and how we can live the best life. They're teaching us how to be great assembly line workers.
That's great. So, thinking about it, as a lifelong entrepreneur, having described your experiences earlier to the audience, what's been your biggest challenge, or what have been your biggest challenges as a lifelong entrepreneur, Roderick?
People, like anybody else. And myself is included in that list of people that I have trouble working with. A mentor of mine a long time ago said P equals P, people equal problems. And the only thing we can hope for in life is a better quality of problem. And I think if you can get out of your own way, if you can enlist mentors, like I have a great coach. I think anybody who is a coach should have a coach, or you should run. If you can enlist people around you that have been there, they've done that, then you're well on your way to that alignment that ultimately leads to the end goal.
That's great. And, you went from 0 to $1 million and 0 and back. And what's the biggest lesson out of all of that?
You hear other people say it, but the first million's the hardest, right? What you still have at the end of that is everything you learned. Who you become, that's what you get to keep. I coached baseball for a lot of years. I don't have any kids of my own, but I coached in Charlotte at a pretty high level. And I would tell the kids every season, it's if you give your all at every practice, if you give your all at every game, doesn't matter what the score is. Maybe the other team sucks. Maybe they're having a bad day. Whether you win or lose is irrelevant. But if you brought everything you have to every day, you will be a better ball player. You will be a better young man. And that's what you get to keep. And the journey to $1 million and down and way back up again, the lessons along the way, that's what I get to keep. And that's why it's easier the second time, because you're a different person when you attack it the next time.
Wow, so great. And maybe, as we get to the close of our discussion today, so grateful for all of our listeners to the People Dividend podcast and listening to Roderick Lenhart today and his journey and so many of the lessons that work for people and culture activities among our leaders today. And so maybe before the last question, why do you live by the quote, the cost of anything is the amount of life you exchange for it?
Well, I'm a Thoreau fan through and through. It's tattooed on my body. So I certainly live by it. I think if you approach things, certainly in our financially driven world, and the simple example I'll give you is if you go buy something, buy a new car, and it's $1,000 a month, and you make $50 an hour, what percentage of your life is the car costing you? How many hours do you have to work? Do you have to work 2,000 hours to pay that off at the end of the day? What else could you be doing that with that time? I think Obviously, I focus on
It's
time
just
a
about
lot.
a work year, 2,000 hours.
Yeah, yeah. So if you structure everything in your life that way, I think it kind of keeps you out of that. Well, I can make the payment mindset that certainly our Western culture is inclined to.
Oh, that's great. And, plenty of ways to get in touch with Roderick Lenhart. But Roderick, why don't you tell our audience about the easiest way to get in touch with you? And we'll put that in
Yeah,
the show notes, and we have some other places we'll send our audience to as well. But
I'm most active on Instagram at Roderick Lenhart, RODRIC. There's no E and no K. $1,000,000flipflops.com is where you can check out the book and everything around that. And then our foundation is the easiest way to get there is SASLA, not salsa. SASLA, SASLA.org. So it's Send a Student Leader Abroad.
here we are. Before we know it, we'll be at the middle of the year in 2025. Um, and if you were to offer, my audience, our audience, one or two pieces of advice to carry them through and forward for the remainder of the year to act on their experiences, to act on their interests, what would those one or two pieces of advice be, Roderick Lenhart?
Yeah, I think the biggest one is there's something that you need to do right now in your relationship, in your business, for your health. And as I'm saying these words, what that is, and you're not doing it. Why? We don't need more information. We don't need more systems. We don't need, even though you and I are both authors, we don't need more books. We need to act on the things we already know we need to do. And when we can remove that roadblock, we are literally unstoppable.
Well, that's a great way to end today's episode of the People Dividend podcast, is to think about the concept of being unstoppable and how that applies to your personal life, your experiences on teams, leading teams, or being a member of teams, or leading larger organizations. So, Roderick Lenhart, thank you so much. It's been a delight to have you, and to everyone in our audience, stay well.